Movie Wars. Episode 0029.
Training Day Copland.
This podcast ain't got shit on King Kong.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Movie Wars Podcast, episode 0029. I'm your host, Kyle, and I brought my smiles and cries.
This shit's chess, not checkers. I'm Drew.
I had a quote and I left my phone downstairs. I'm Phil.
Do the King Kong one.
God damn it.
You could do
King Kong ain't got nothing on Phil.
because you did your hand like you were.
King Kong ain't got shit on Denzel Washington.
We have a crooked cop matchup here, which we have been stoked about. Phil and I have been like just hitting that Training Day bell for a while.
Oh, yeah. We love crooked cops around here.
Yeah, that's right. So glad we finally get to do it. I think if you could describe this matchup, this episode with one adage, it would be if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
Right? Because one thing I love beyond the crooked cop thing is this kind of unsuspecting hero element too. We got Ethan Hawke's Jake, and then we got Freddy, these kind of naive, you know, in Sly's case, a little dumb, a little fat, a little old.
Oh, Sly's playing another dumb guy? Wow. What a surprise.
I'm right here. I didn't ask for your opinion, okay? I made Rocky, okay?
But I love this unsuspecting hero element, and what's really interesting is beyond the crooked cop thing, there's the moral quandary. How flexible can your morals be? Because it's interesting when you look at the dark side, if you want to call it evil, if you want to call it the bad guys, whatever it is, they don't play by a rule book. Cops, supposedly supposed to play by a rule book. We know how that goes in real life and in fiction, but you know, you're automatically outmanned, outgunned in that situation because you have to play by a certain set of rules. So in both of these films, our naive, whatever you want to call them, our unsuspecting heroes have to figure out how morally flexible can I be to take down the bad guy. And we see this with Freddy because Freddy has to steal the files from the Internal Affairs Office. So he steals information to make that happen. But what's interesting is, I think we would all say, hey, we support Jake and we support Freddy. Yeah, they had to do a little wrong to bring down Alonzo or bring down the bad organization. But it's like, I kind of thought, I don't know about you, but it's like, I thought about Ethan Hawke's character and Freddy beyond the movie. I'm like, isn't that the first step? You take a bribe here, you do a little thing here, then you're Alonzo, and then you're in the mob as a cop. It's like, yes, this time it worked out, but is this the first step? Because Alonzo alludes throughout the whole film, was like, I used to be like you. You know, I used to be a good guy. I used to want to take down bad guys. It just takes one little thing. It's interesting, and I've talked about this on the podcast before. I grew up, my dad was a decorated narcotics officer, but I saw it. This is for real. I did see how that line of work, being around bad guys, pretending to buy drugs, selling drugs as a cop, it did degrade his, and I won't get into it, but his sense of right or wrong in real life were completely fucked up.
Dude, that scene in the car when he's walking him through, like, I used to be just like you. It starts like this, and then this happens, and then this happens. And you're sitting there like, oh my God. Like, he almost convinces me as the audience, like, yeah. You almost start pulling for him.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is okay.
Yeah.
Part of that's because it's Denzel. Like, we love you, Denzel.
Dude.
Whatever you do is okay.
Well, it's also that, like, I think the illustration that it illustrates so well,
moral flexibility,
is the fact that, like, so much of life truly exists in that gray area. And I think that's something that humans as a whole have a really hard time with. Like, we don't like the gray area. Mm-hmm. We want there to be these defined lines and these sides. We want to be able to pick teams or whatever. And I think both of these movies did a really good job at illustrating it and kind of left the morality of it up to the viewer.
Did it? I mean,
maybe
scooping
not.
$250,000 off the top of a drug bust is not really morally gray.
Yeah, but in general, it kind of paints that picture that, like, well, if you want to take down, really shitty situations in the street, do you need to kind of become like them in a certain way in order to do it?
Right.
And the same thing with Copland. It's like, if you're wanting to take down this situation, you're also having to steal and you're also having to do these things that you thought you would never do. So there's a lot of gray and everybody's black and white. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well said.
Training Day was so enthralling. I was just from the moment I started watching it, and I had never seen it. Like, I watched it for the first time. I know, it was crazy.
It's such a cult classic.
I watched it for the first time for this podcast a couple weeks ago, and it was just like such a ride. Like, I just had so much fun with it, and Denzel was just in such command.
He was.
Like,
command is the word.
That is the word.
He was just like alpha male, just dominating. Like, made everybody that was on screen with him better, but was clearly in control, and just it was like Michael Jordan just dominating, like just at the top of his game.
Well
Whereas
said.
the other movie, Copland, you know, obviously I get the similarities with the dirty cops and all that. And it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I felt like Sly was kind of like aging Charles Barkley, like with the Rockets. Like he was like kind of cumbersome, like had seen better days, still good, still enjoyable, gets the job done, but just it was not the Sly that we all know and love.
I like to see you do what I do. I like to see you get in front of a microphone. You feel strong. You fucking talk about the way I look. It's easy. It's easy. You sit in your chair over your fucking lever.
I mean, honestly, it was like a little surprising to see him like so overweight and so. But I think it played well into like he was supposed to be kind of slow and dumb and naive.
Yeah.
And he had the old car, and he wasn't NYPD. He was just across the bridge, and like it felt right for his character. But yeah, I enjoyed both movies. I'm excited to chat about them.
Hell yeah, Phil. Impressions?
Yeah, man. Training Day is a kind of, without getting too far into the way I rank movies in my mind, there are like the obvious brilliant films that are like undeniably great, and then there are like the personal favorites that they're good in their own right and in the niche that they play in, but like, you know, I could see why someone wouldn't like them, but I could also see why someone would love them. And like the Fast and the Furious is that for me, and also Training Day falls in that category. Like I think it's a really interesting, enthralling take on the crooked cop thing, and I think it also calls into, you know, it challenges the viewer to think about what they define as, you know, the line, the black and white line, like, you know, where do your morals lie? Like, you know, what would you do in this situation? And just overall, it is a really fun, just enthralling movie to watch. It's one of my like kind of cult favorites, and Copland watched for the first time for this podcast. And I mean, to be honest, I felt like it was a movie that should have been better than it was. Like the cast was huge. The budget was obviously huge. Like everything about it screamed, this should have been great, and it wasn't. But to me, I tried to look past that and look at the point they were trying to make and the story they were trying to tell, and I felt like it was trying to tell a really important story and get some really important points across. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed both of them. Like Training Day is just a cult classic in its own right, and then Copland is kind of also, but for the wrong reasons. So
I just got the overwhelming sense, and I think I was watching with you, Kyle, and I told you this, but they really wanted it to be like a Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Casino kind of movie with that cast. Like you could tell that's what they were going for, and it fell flat for me a little bit.
They had all of Scorsese's guys. They even had Frank Vincent in there, and
it had all the pieces, but the whole picture was off.
And it's cool to cover Ray Liotta this week. You know, may he rest in peace.
God rest his soul. I'm glad you said that.
He was fantastic in this film.
Yeah,
one of his top roles.
I texted you guys the minute that I read that. I was just, Goodfellas is my second favorite film. My favorite scene probably of all time in film is the laughing at Joe Pesci's storytelling.
That gif is a classic.
It's my favorite fucking scene ever. And now that Ray Liotta died, I'm just like, oh, and then we covered this. It's crazy.
We've covered a decent amount of Ray on this podcast.
Yeah, Sheila's Joe Jackson.
Yep.
God rest your soul, Ray. We love you. We miss you. My impressions, I always loved Training Day. Training Day was a movie I watched a lot after it came out. It was one of the early DVDs. I feel like Denzel Washington's movies were always like the early DVDs. John Q. You remember when it came in the giant box that was the size of a library
book? Oh my gosh, that's so funny, Kyle. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Training Day, John Q. What's the fire movie? Walking in Fire?
Man on Fire?
Man on Fire.
Yes. Denzel was in all the giant DVD cases.
He went through an action phase.
The Denzel quadrilogy. It's like 4 Denzel movies for $5.99 at
Manchurian
Walmart.
Candidate or whatever.
You know, Denzel, he played a lot of good guys. You know, I mean, he had his Malcolm X role, but then he was known for a lot of these good guy roles. And when I was young, I didn't really have the verbiage to say why I liked this movie, but I just loved watching it. Now with my movie wars brain, it's like you said, I can't say it better than Drew did. Command. I think back to what, you know, how Michael Douglas described why they got Jack Nicholson in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It didn't really make sense to me when he said the shadow that Jack Nicholson cast. I think this movie actually made that statement clear to me, because I think you could say Command or Denzel's power in this movie is so big and his shadow is so big over this movie, and everyone else is great. I mean, Ethan Hawke's fantastic, totally. Evan Mendez, all great. Yeah. But Denzel is otherworldly.
I mean, here's the thing, like, do you ever see a Denzel movie where you don't 100% buy him in that role?
Oh,
when has he ever really missed? Like,
I can't
the guy
remember
is
a movie I don't like.
Well, never, but this one is special.
Yeah, it is.
This is a superstar at the tippy top of his powers.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yes. That's a way to say it. I love that. I like Copland a lot. It's not as good as Training Day, but I love it. As a Sly lifer, I'm so familiar with Sly's body work. A slifer.
That sounds like a blog or a website.
The Sly Lifer.
Come swing by the Sly Life.
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna look at Rambo's shirtless pictures today. But I loved him. He wanted to do something different here. He talks about it in the commentary. He was like, I took this role because I wanted to do. He was tired of the action thing. He was tired of Rambo 3 and just muscles, and he wanted to do something different. And I think he does really well. And during the casting portion, we'll get to more of that. But I definitely love his difference here. It's not as good as Training Day, but I loved watching it. I watched it once with the commentary and once without, and I enjoyed both watches. And really fun movie. So I thought it was a little mailed in. It's kind of a mailed in plot in terms of both of these movies had a weird through line in that we had the main story, which is crooked coppery, but then we had the Russian through line, and then we're like Copland like throws a lot at you at once, and they only use dialogue, so you really you never see the mob in the movie. So you remember I told you this when we were watching. It was like within a 5-minute span in the dialogue, it's like if you sneezed, like you totally missed.
Well, that's
what was happening.
And that's where like the storytelling of Copland gets a little clunky. Is like you could tell they had a lot to say, but they just would have to really kind of like patchwork a lot of the main plot points into the film as you're watching it. Like, this town's owned by the mob. You were placed in this situation, Freddy, by the mob. And you're like supposed to just pivot on a dime and be like, oh, okay, I've got that now.
Right. I read something that basically said this movie is just like a Western where it's like the town is owned by the bad guy gang and it ends in a gunfight, like it's kind of like a pretty simple plot structure.
That's exactly how James Mangold, the director, described it. He said, I wanted to make a Western, but he's like, I didn't want to make like a Western. So that's exactly what, you're spot on. Yeah. Makes total sense.
A Northeastern he made.
A Northeastern, a New Jersey. Before we get into randos, wanted to get into a little bit of our Patreon.
More like Patreon.
Listen, I'm not going to beat this to death. If you don't want to get sucked into the mob and you want to stay a good guy, you got to get on our Patreon. All right. Yep. You don't want to smoke PCP on the job. You don't want to smoke germ or get wet. You want to get special access to bonus content. You don't want to listen to ball shaving ads. Nope. You want to hang out with us. You want to do Q&As. You want to support the show and you want to put food in our babies' tummies.
Let me tell you how shitty one of these fucking ball shaving ads can be.
Do you ever wake up and your wife's like, oh my God, you've got a hamster down there, honey? And you're just like, well, shit, what do I do? Well, now I've got the solution for you. Ball Shaver 2000. Take it down there, you won't feel a goddamn thing. Okay.
That was uncomfortable as fuck. I don't like saying it. You don't like listening to it. There's a way around this shit. Take it away, Kyle.
Before I knew about this product, I used a machete. We all know where that went, honey.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Nobody likes
this is police brutality right now. Let's get back to the podcast.
Anyway, go to the link in our website. Support us, feed our children, support the show. It makes us better, and we love you for it. Go to our Patreon.
It's up here. It's the Patreon's up here where my finger's pointing.
I'm pointing. Yeah, we're pointing to it. Do you
this
see
is
it?
An audio-only podcast.
Do you see it?
Do you
Stop
see
pointing.
the link?
Put your fingers down.
All right, randos about Training Day. I didn't know you liked to get wet, though. Davis Guggenheim was the initial first director, and he was going to cast Samuel L. Jackson as Alonzo and Matt Damon as Jay Coit.
Both would have worked.
Yeah, would have worked. Would not have been as good. And you guys know I'm sick of Matt Damon. I love him, but I'm tapped out, man.
You were sick of him the day he came on the scene.
I was just like, all right, that's enough, Damon. Then they sent him to Mars, and then he was a special agent. I'm like, Matt Damon could do anything.
You saw Good Will Hunting. You're like, you know what? I think I've had enough.
Growing food with his own shit.
I was okay with him being really good at math and cleaning the school. Like, I was fine with that. But anyway, Denzel eventually accepted the role, and then he requested that director Antoine Fuqua be hired instead, so they fired Guggenheim. And that's how they ended up. Actually, Eminem was also considered to play the role of Jake. So, isn't that crazy? Yeah, Eminem. But he was doing 8 Mile.
As much as I love 8 Mile, I'm not sure that he would have been the right guy for this.
I don't know. The older Eminem gets, he's so moody.
But he wasn't older here.
But as he's gotten older, I'm like, he actually probably could have pulled off some roles. I'm not saying this role, but he's so moody. I'm just like, I think he actually could have played some pissed off roles.
Feels like he could have taken that path. Like he could have been like, you know what? He could have done the Justin Timberlake thing. We're like, I don't know how much I need music anymore. I kind of conquered that world. I'm gonna just go act. He could have done it.
And you'll love this. Other people that tested for the role of Hoyt: Tobey Maguire, Ryan Philippe, Freddie Prinze Jr., Scott Speedman, and Paul Walker.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So they
all of those guys I could see in that situation. Freddie Prinze also. He He plays kind of the faux innocent dude.
Freddie had a
pretty
moment
well.
too. He was 90s.
Yeah. He did great.
Yeah.
He was solid in a lot of those roles.
all those guys you just listed are too pretty. Ethan
Pretty
is
Prince
not
Jr.
his teeth and
Pretty Prince Jr.
Pretty Friends Jr.
I agree with that. Finish that point because I agree.
Well,
with
I
you.
just think Ethan has this like there's a believability that he just really wants to be a cop. Paul
Yeah.
Walker, it's like, dude, come on.
Yeah, we've been there.
You're too attractive.
Yeah.
Go drive fast cars for a living.
Yeah.
So speaking of Hawk, this is really funny. So Hawk was an actor, but he hadn't had a breakthrough role yet, I don't think. And he was screen testing across from, not screen testing, he was auditioning across from Denzel, and Denzel started to improvise with him. And Ethan Hawke was very scripted, very like trying to be on the note. And it pissed off Hawk so bad, like, because Denzel was doing what he was doing in the movie, except he was doing it to this guy that hadn't acted across from him before.
Yeah.
He got so pissed, he told him to go to hell and got out of the room and just was like completely pissed off. And
Ethan Hawke?
Yes. And they called him
Wow.
a couple seconds. They're like, hey, you got it. You did great. And he was like, he thought Washington was like trying to annihilate his chances of getting this role. But they called him
Wow.
like after he walked out of the room. He's like, you got it. You're good. We loved what you did. He told Denzel Washington to go to hell.
Wow.
Because imagine not being ready for it and the character of Alonzo is just coming at you from across the table. It's like,
Dude, I cannot imagine. I mean, Denzel is like, think about how intense he comes across on the screen, and then imagine what that's got to be like in person.
yeah.
Seems like it'd be a lot.
It'd be intense. If you thought you recognized that coffee shop at the beginning of training day, you did. We've covered that coffee shop before. That's the same coffee shop where...
Speed?
Nope.
No.
7.
Oh, no way.
Yep, in 7. So Brad Pitt, the coffee shop where he meets Morgan Freeman, that's the same coffee shop, but that coffee shop was also used for Ghost World and for Gone in 60 Seconds. So that's a frequent coffee shop in films.
It reminded me of Pulp Fiction.
It did. It did have that vibe. Totally agree. According to director Antoine Fuqua, Snoop Dogg was a complete professional throughout the filming, but his fans were not.
Yeah,
Anytime
not
where
surprising.
Snoop Dogg was being filmed, out of nowhere, like hundreds of fans like would come out and they were chanting and supporting him.
I
And
mean,
so,
I kind of can't blame them a little, as much
They
as I
had-
don't like fan culture. Like,
because they kept disrupting the production, they had to keep escorting these fans off. Apparently, Snoop didn't like initiate it, like, but people would, because he's, what is he, 6'5" or whatever? He
Yeah.
seems like, oh my god, and they're in L.A., so people were just like,
but he was in a
swarming.
wheelchair, so like he couldn't have been 6'5" in a
I
wheelchair.
don't know if he was the whole time. I don't know if he's going straight method in training day. Do you think?
Man, I don't know. He's smart.
I'm gonna say no.
No.
Although I think that totally
Hey,
worked.
now.
The
It
whole
did.
like Snoop in a wheelchair thing. It
was
feels like
so
if I had
good.
read that on paper, I'd be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever. Like, Snoop, why are we putting him in a wheelchair? No, but it totally worked.
It worked.
I loved it. Copland randos. Sly almost passed.
Coplando.
Coplando.
Coplandos. Sly almost passed on this because this is his words, not mine. He says that he thought they needed a good actor to play this role. He just didn't think he had the chops.
Wow.
And he
Wow.
was, I
Fishing
know.
for a compliment.
20
much?
I know.
years
One of my-
after Rocky.
Well, and I'm a fan. I'm like, you are a good actor. I love you. You're my hero. I love you.
In his defense, he's not really known as a good actor.
Yeah, he's known as an action guy, Rocky. I don't know. I think I like his
Rambo.
stuff. He's
over
no,
the top.
yeah, he's no Daniel Day-Lewis, but I love what he does.
Cliffhanger.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was an action dude. He made a lot of money doing Rambo and Rocky, just kind of 1-2 punch, no pun intended, for a lot of years. And he probably got to a place in his career in the late 90s when he was like, hey, I'd love to do just like a drama where there's some chops
However,
involved.
if I was that far into my career and somebody, if this is the right movie that I'm thinking of, and somebody was like, look, we're going to pay you X amount of, what was undoubtedly a lot of money to eat an entire Italian wedding cake and get fat as fuck. And then you can just work it all off because you have like trainers at your disposal. I'd be like, you know what? I'd probably be into that.
Sure.
Because there's nothing wrong. Everybody wants a reason to eat a lot of food.
You think that was it, though, or are you being facetious?
No, it definitely wasn't it. I mean, maybe it
I
was.
was gonna
though.
say, I
don't
just
know.
feel like there comes a point when, at what point does he not need to make another few $1 million? Like, he doesn't give a shit.
He could only
He
shoot.
was trying to do that because he saw Leota and De Niro, and like he was trying to make a movie, and
Yeah.
like again, they were going. I think everybody involved thought this was Goodfellas or Casino or Pulp Fiction, or they
And
thought it was
on
like
paper, it should have been.
that this was like their kind of their Oscar drama
Yeah.
thing, and it just didn't work out.
Well, Sly is an artistic guy. I don't know if anyone that's listening hasn't seen his paintings. He has a painting Instagram account that's separate from his normal. He's a phenomenal painter. He went to school in Switzerland. He didn't grow up in the States, or didn't go to school in the States. He's a very artistic, in real
Yes.
life, quiet.
Well, he wrote Rocky, for
Yeah.
God's sake. I mean, he's an artist.
He's quiet,
Not just
humble.
a meathead.
Yeah, the Rambo, and the Rambo character really isn't a meathead either. Like he looked by the end of it, by the 3rd, 4th, and 5th installment, he looks like one, but he's still quiet.
I guess I'll protect this village.
Yeah, but there's not a lot of dynamic range there. He's
True.
just-
Rocky either. I guess Rocky was kind of one
it
note.
is what it is.
Sly said that he was getting a ton of double looks, so people would see him out in public while he was getting ready for this role with the weight gain, and people would give him double looks. And apparently, like the media, fans, people thought like,
He was just letting
is
himself go.
this his Sly's bad phase? Like, are we going to see like rehab stories about Sylvester Stallone?
Was the weight an important piece of this character? I didn't. To me, it was just more distracting than adding to anything. To
I
his
think
character.
it was. It just played to the fact that he was just some schlub office cop from in a small town. It just wasn't. Well, it just like added to the.
It was the
aesthetic
90s, though. Everybody dressed like they were schlubs. Like,
Yeah, I think but the funny thing about Fat Stallone is you could tell that the guy was still like jacked under it all, because like you'd look at his arms and like you could see the just like the veins and the muscles even with his fatness.
His weight gain looks a lot better than my weight gain. He's still got that Italian stallion thing going on.
nowadays, they can just fatten you up with CGI.
Yeah.
Look at Hemsworth in Endgame. He was Fat Thor. He was just,
Back then, and they didn't have what Sly did, which was he ate a strict diet of pancakes and French fries. And he said days that he wasn't on set, he would go to New York, and in New York there was this place called, I think it was called the Canadian Pancake House. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was called the Canadian Pancake House. And the way he described it in the commentary, he said they would bring out pancakes on a plate that was the size of a trash can lid, and he would just eat it. So he said French toast, pancakes, and French fries. That's all he ate for weeks.
I just can't.
I would feel, you would feel like death after a certain point. Like 2 days of that, and I would tap out.
And it would hit you on so many levels other than physical. Like you'd be mentally foggy. You'd be, psychologically, you'd be discouraged about your whole life because you feel like shit.
Which is what he needed for the role. That's who he was as a person. His
Fair enough,
life.
but I mean, I guess kudos to you actors out there who can, I know there's a lot of you that listen who can just like gain 40 pounds and feel good about it and go do a role and then just cut 40 pounds. Like that's crazy. I could never.
Yeah, totally. Especially at that age. What was he, like in his solid late 40s at that point?
I don't know if it's late 40s, but may have been. Yeah, maybe. It was really funny during the commentary, the first scene where you see his stomach, where he's getting out of his bed and his stomach's hanging out. In the commentary, he goes, definitely a cesarean. And the whole James Mangold and Robert Patrick are on the commentary. They all crack up. They're just like, oh my gosh, it's cesarean.
Dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. Speaking of Robert Patrick, I was so thrilled to see him. I love him. I mean, obviously being, in T2, just lifelong lover of Robert Patrick. He did 3 weeks of ride-alongs with NYPD folks to, prepare for this for NYPD police officers. And because he's a Midwestern guy, he doesn't really have the New Jersey accent. So one of the actors, the guy that played Frank Lagonda, is an actual real-life cop. So he became an actor because he was a cop in New Jersey and New York, and he started to get into films. They also kind of used him in a double role where he helped other people be more authentic as police officers. He helped Robert Patrick nail his New Jersey accent, because if you hear Arthur Nascarella speak in real life, his New Jersey accent is out of this world. And so Robert Patrick said he helped him not only become a more authentic police officer, but actually get a northern accent like
Amazing.
he had. Couple more randos here. Sly had the dynamic of this cast was really interesting, and I'll definitely talk more about this during the casting sections, but because there were so many big actors, you had Keitel, you had freaking De Niro, you had
Cast
Ray
was
Liotta.
out of control.
Yeah, you had everybody. He said it was because he was kind of out of his element, Sly, doing drama, he needed a way to anchor himself in his role, because he said there was a lot of one-upsmanship. People I
believe it.
No one wanted to be out-acted on that set, so there was a lot of De Niro was like, oh yeah, well, let's do that again, a lot of competition. And so he carried a Japanese miniature bone carved turtle in his pocket, because he asked himself, and this is what he says in the commentary, he was like, well, what would Freddy be if Freddy was an animal? He'd be a turtle. Mm-hmm. And so he had this little thing, and whenever in between takes, he would put his hand in his pocket, rub this turtle to remind him that Freddy is not Rambo, that Freddy is not Robert De Niro, that Freddy is Freddy. And that was his way.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Like a little totem type situation.
Yes, and yes, that's a good, totem. Good way to say that. And that's exactly what he wanted, because he said it was so tempting to want to like act because he was intimidated by De Niro, and so was Robert Patrick. And there was all this intimidation and one-upmanship. He's like, how do I stay anchored? Rub the turtle. And so that's how we stayed.
That's how I stay angry.
Yeah, that's how
Always
we
rub my turtle.
Or that's how we stayed dumb and fat. So
Yeah.
rubbing the turtle. It wasn't the pancakes, it was the turtle. And Sly, also another thing he did, he put silicone in his ear and walked around New York City because he didn't know what it was like to only hear out of one ear. So he kept silicone.
Wow.
Yeah, he put silicone in his ear, walked around New York City, and he wore it on set. And he said on the commentary, he's like, you actually wouldn't believe how disorienting a life of only hearing out of one ear is. He's like, I was completely disoriented the whole time. And so he said it was a complete shock. And so he said it really did play into the character. So your life really does kind of become redefined if you lose your hearing completely in one ear, because he says you're always looking in the direction of the ear that you hear from. And so like you're kind of always.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
So yeah, absolutely. And so, and this is not really random, but just kind of tagging on the casting thing. Like everybody was intimidated by De Niro. So it was like Patrick was intimidated by De Niro. And so Sly was intimidated, and Robert De Niro was like, they would play jokes on each other. There was this amazing dynamic on that set. So it's interesting. I'll get more to it later in the casting. Just cut that. I'm going to save that for casting. Shall we war?
Yeah. Go to streets with it. I don't know what's happening.
When it comes to the war card, I just, over the top was pretty good. But
Hey, Drew!
I got the iPad.
Hey, get that iPad.
Get that motherfucking iPad, yeah!
Denzel Washington versus Sylvester Stallone.
Leading Man Battle 2022.
Denzel versus Sylvester?
Yeah.
Ooh, I feel like
That's
unfair.
What do you think, Phil?
I mean, obviously Stallone, because Denzel didn't need enough cake to get fat. Just kidding. Denzel. I feel like Denzel would beat a lot of people in much higher level roles in much higher tier movies than these. But man, Denzel turned in a insane performance in Training Day. He was 1,000% convincing as the character that he played, and like I don't know how as Jake Hoyt you would resist that level of seeming just conviction and know-how and experience and just gravitas that he brought to that role. I mean, Denzel all the way.
Well said. I totally agree. I mean, he was just in complete control of every there wasn't a wasted breath. It just felt like every line he delivered, it came with like a punch. It just, I was leaning in the whole time.
Only Denzel could point a gun at you and you feel like it's okay. Anybody else, there'd be a problem. But Denzel, I'd be like, well, he knows what he's doing.
Just like that opening scene with the newspaper, how he was just like so condescending, like such a dickhead in the most beautiful way. And then when he went to the projects or whatever to see his lover, and you're like, oh, he's with her. And then you meet the kid, and you're like, oh dear God, that's his son. Like, and the way he was like, you all right? Okay, good.
He kind of doesn't care, but kind of does.
Yeah, you just get, it's kind of chilling. It's like, oh my God. Because you like him, but you can't stand him at the same time. And you're just like, as an audience member, you're just like so torn up. You're like, but I love him. I want to root for him. But no, this man is evil.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And a lot of that, kudos to the script. I mean, it's just a great screenplay.
It really is.
So yeah, anyway, Denzel.
I'm so glad you saw this movie.
Yeah.
I know, I'm too. I cannot believe. If nothing else, I'm so happy that I'm on this podcast because I'm just catching up on all these movies.
Phil and I had a feeling you would love it. I'll add more. You guys have both said it perfectly, and usually by this time, if I agree, I'm like, oh, got nothing else to say. But there's a lot of stuff here. I mean, there were the moments where he shined to me. The scene that actually comes to me, there's two. The first one is when him and Jake are having a shootout in the apartment building where his girlfriend and his son are. And even though like Ethan Hawke kind of has the angle advantage of the gun, Alonzo is still like kind of trying to control the game. It's like my son's in the room, Jake. My son's in the he's like all the things, and he's still so just like maniacal
and using his son to
yes,
it's disgusting.
And the shotgun under the bed, by the way, that
was wild.
That was cool. And the last scene is, and this is one of the biggest lines in the movie. King Kong ain't got nothing. Whatever. What is it?
King Kong ain't got shit on me.
That's an improv. So he completely.
No way.
I read that. Totally made it up.
So many of those. Gosh, I feel like every great line in cinema was improv.
Yeah. Some of the greatest.
How many have we covered at this point?
Cannoli,
where it's like this line
Bigger
that's
Boat,
epic. It was completely
the entire
improv.
Goodfellas scene at the table. That the whole thing.
Wasn't there some Taxi Driver line too? That's monumental. That
he was
completely
during the
improv?
scenes where he's. Are you talking to me? He just was riffing in the mirror for like an hour.
Gosh, man.
What's interesting is, one of the things that I loved about the King Kong line is that he's still so big and aggressive, but he also played the desperation when they are like, they're done with him and they give the gun to Jake like, hey, we're on your side. The amount of desperation and power at the same time that Denzel showed, I was like, wow, that's a hard balance to show. He's like sputtering. That aggression is starting to sputter, and he really demonstrated that. This role was controversial. He was a fan favorite of the NAACP. They were heavily supportive of him. They visited him on set though, because they were like, we don't think you should do this, because they thought it was not advancing their mission. And so it really pissed him off. Ethan Hawke talks about this because they thought they could control the role, and they thought that it was, so this role was so powerful that they visited him on set, like, you can't do this, you shouldn't do this is bad for black people, that whole thing. And so he literally got a visit. So there's so much to this role. He was such a good guy most of the time, and then he does this. It's like he is the perfect bad guy. Yeah. He's so good. So anyway, I don't got to sell it anymore, but one of the main reasons I want to do this movie was this performance. So this is an easy. Hey, and I love what Sly did as a fan and a Slifer over here. I thought he did great, and I think if this movie, maybe Copland went against something else, Sly might have an edge here. No, this is not even. This is men and boys right here. So yeah, 1-0 training day, but we got best supporting cast next on that iPad.
Copland, Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Peter Berg, Janine Garofalo, Robert Patrick, Michael Rappaport.
Jeez, that's a cast.
It doesn't end.
It doesn't end.
And we'll throw in Edie Falco from
The Sopranos.
Training Day, Ethan Hawke, Scott Glenn, Tom Berenger. We'll throw in the musicians, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Macy Gray. I'm going to go first. This is a layup for Copland. What a deep bench. What a deep bench.
That whole movie was, like, once again, on paper, that movie should have been unbelievable.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I was so in it. Like, the cast alone would have got me to the theaters back in 97.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If I wasn't only 9 at the time. So
yeah, when your supporting cast starts off with Harvey Keitel, like
yeah, and De Niro.
Well, De Niro is fourth build. Yeah, I mean, for God's sake. Yeah, I'll go Copland easy. What do you think, Kyle?
This is tough. I am going Copland, but I do want to add an asterisk. I think some of that stuff I was talking about earlier with the push and pull of, there was so much like one-uppery on set with these guys, like no one wanted to be out-acted, yet no one felt like they took the lead. And it wasn't going to be Sly, because Sly was supposed to be toned down. He was supposed to be naive and dumb, so he wasn't going to be like out front, but it kind of felt like everybody was doing their midline role. Like if De Niro's greatest role is Travis Bickle, you know, he's or Jimmy Conway in Goodfellas, he like cut that in half. Harvey Keitel, if his best role is Sport and Taxi Driver or Mean Streets or whatever, he cut that in half. Like it felt like they were all doing half except for Robert Patrick.
That's true. That's a great point, Kyle. Actually, I will say, if I had to pick one supporting actor, I would go Ethan Hawke.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But if I'm picking the whole lot of them.
Yes. And I thought, I thought Robert Patrick, which is funny, he was the most nervous on set around all these guys. I thought he was the best supporting actor. And another reason it wins, listen, I hate to say this. I know Fuqua wanted to add authenticity because Training Day is filmed where he grew up, in the neighborhoods where he grew up. So he's very connected to both the police and to the gangs and to the criminals and to the people that just live there. And so it was very important for him to make it authentic, which is why he wanted Dr. Dre, Macy Gray, and Snoop. I thought Snoop did great. I thought Dr. Dre and Macy Gray were wasted opportunities. I think Dr. Dre is an obviously bad actor in this film. I think it would have been better suited to hire a real, authentic actor. I hate to say it, because as a fan, I'm a huge fan of his music, and he's such a gifted musician and businessman. But I thought, like, every moment Dr. Dre was on screen, I was like, like he's the weak link. So even though it's a muted Robert De Niro, a midline Keitel, I still think it beats out a wasted casting of Dr. Dre and Macy Gray.
It's well said. Yeah. My only problem with that cast was it was just a bunch of middle-aged white dudes, and I really struggled to keep up with who they all were.
Yeah,
spilled milk.
It's just a bunch of white cops in their 40s. I'm like, man,
God, I know.
Spilled milk.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Let's fucking give him mustaches. And like De Niro and Patrick got these crazy mustaches.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want about representation, whatever. But I just would love some variance in some age and some gender and some ethnicity so I can tell them all apart, because they all look the same to me.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree. They were all blurring together, and they all kind of talked. Especially when you get deeper into the casting with the Arthur Nescarellas and things like that. Yeah. Phil, what do you think?
Oh, I thought I'd already given my vote, but I guess not. I would go Copland also for supporting, just because of the sheer like spiked bat nature of that supporting cast. Like it's yeah, like it's just like they don't even. That's like a roll your helmets onto the field situation. Yeah. The sheer star power of that cast wins alone, even if they all just stood there. Yeah, Copland. Yeah.
God, we didn't even talk about Leota, and that's a problem with these big casts. Yeah. Sometimes you leave off a rock star. One of Leota's, to me, most middle of the road performances. There's moments where it's great,
but was there really room? Where was there really room for any of them to shine? Like they were all competing for such a marginal amount of screen time overall. I mean, Michael Rappaport, who went on to do some really incredible things in a lot of different like movies and television shows. Like he's only in the movie for like the first 5 minutes and then he's gone, you know?
Yeah, I think they all had like a scene that was pretty special. You know, De Niro had a scene in The Office talking about like, you know, rescuing cats, you know, stuff like
You're the mayor of Copland.
Yeah, and what was the scene? Leota in the bar, I thought was pretty good. He had a scene when he got pissed when they were playing pool or something. That was pretty good.
I also want to point out in both of these films, like at about the midpoint of the film, they like say the name of the movie in dialogue.
Yes,
like
both movies.
At one point,
this is your training day, son.
Training day. He's like, "This is your training day, son." And he's like, "You're the mayor of Copland."
I know.
It's like we've got to find a way to like reinforce our brand by getting the name of these fucking movies.
I see. That's interesting. I assumed it was the other way around. I assumed they wrote the screenplay and they didn't know what to call it. So like,
interesting.
Copland.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that,
it was originally called.
It's in the fucking script.
They were both
Training Day.
Great names, by the way.
Yeah.
Training Day for a movie, like, and it literally takes place over one day. Like that's a terrible fucking day.
And I love how they bookended it, where like the first scene is him in the morning with his wife taking a phone call, and at the end it just ends with him. You know he's gonna walk in. She's like, "How was your day?" And he's like, "You're not gonna believe this shit."
Yeah.
Like it was perfect.
Imagine recapping that day. No one would believe you.
Yeah, it was really, really well. It's just a good story. Well told.
Yeah, the original title of Copland was Copville, and then Trash Can Pancake Lid. So,
right.
Really bad joke. War, what is it good for? Seinfeld. All right. It's tied at 1. I love this. By the way, when I put out feelers on social media that we were recording this tonight, even responses on TikTok and Facebook, people act there's a Copland contingency, and based just on my anecdotal feedback from fans, it was about half and half.
Yeah.
I was surprised. First bro category. So you have to use a little bit of imagination here, because obviously Alonzo's the one doing the training. But I'm sure Freddie at some point in his small little cop career had to do some training. So if you're a new rookie police officer, would you rather go out and be trained by Alonzo or Freddie? Phil, why don't you kick us off?
Man.
Tough.
No, not tough. Not gonna lie. I would rather be trained by Alonzo, because I feel like Jake's resistance to all that situation just made the whole thing worse. I feel like if you're some young rookie cop getting sent out there to be like, you know, brought up by this like legendary narcotics detective, like I'm taking it all in and I'm listening, even if I don't agree with it. Because the reality is, like, any industry you step into, if one of the greats goes and takes you under his wing, you're gonna see a lot of things that you never even could have fathomed. So like, I hate to say it.
Come on.
What?
I'm sorry, I can't.
It got
Are
crazy.
you smoking PCP?
Can we just talk about the shit that this man went through?
Yes.
Yeah, but imagine if Jake had just been along for, like, in it. Fuck yeah, I'm gonna do all this fucking shit with you, you know?
No
then
way.
Alonzo would have been like balls to the wall, like, I found my new partner, you know?
Phil, we've given you a lot of credence on this podcast. On the Castaway, we were both like, we would wanted to be stranded with you because we feel like our survivability, like, you are a man amongst boys here, but no fucking way.
No, he almost died numerous times.
But you guys didn't think
accused
that, like,
of murder,
some
high
of
on PCP,
chastised for interrupting the newspaper right off the bat. Can I read my newspaper?
Basically lectured for stopping a rape.
Well, I mean, I get it, dude.
Give me Freddie. Take me to New Jersey. I'll sit down with Freddie. We'll have a donut before we get started, and we'll just relax.
I mean, I got the crappy part about everything with Training Day was I understood a lot of where Alonzo was coming from. Like, I not to say that like you let yourself get that far down the path of depravity, but like I mean, you do have to get your hands dirty in those situations. Like, you can't be just like good boy cop and going and busting up narcotics rings. Like, they're guys that go into deep cover cover for a reason.
You do, yeah,
You know?
right. Yeah, and that's I saw that with my dad. It's true. You do have to get there.
So I got where Alonzo was coming from. Like a lot of his antics.
Not the question.
Yeah, I know. All that to say, I would personally rather be trained by Alonzo because I feel like I'd get the real shit. Whereas Freddie would just be like, I don't know, man. Maybe
You
we
want to get some
go,
pancakes?
we go down this restaurant, and drink some coffee, and then we'll go watch some people skateboard in the wrong place. You know.
We're going to smoke some cigarettes.
Skateboard in the wrong place.
True.
I mean, I already said my piece. I'd rather go to New Jersey and chill with Freddie. He seems less stressful.
Yeah, we've gone over this. I need to be pampered. I need time. I need a non-threatening environment. I couldn't handle Alonzo. I respect you, Phil. I could not handle Alonzo's thing. The minute he chastises me about the newspaper, I'm like, you know what? I'm in the wrong job. I need to do something else because if I can't even talk to you about your newspaper, and I would be gone in the first hour. Like
He's testing you, though.
Here's what I'm saying.
I know,
though.
but I'm very
What do I
easy-
always say, Kyle? Life is too short for assholes.
Yes.
And in the newspaper scene, I was like, this dude's an asshole. I'd be out of there, but fuck this shit.
See, I was like, this guy wants to teach me. Teach me, sensei.
Also, you take a risk.
I don't got time for dickheads.
Drew and I will go get pancakes with Freddie. All right. Uh-oh, we got a lead here. Copland.
Damn it!
Cupville.
Aaron
Hey,
Copland.
we bow down to the scorecard, okay? We give into its power, oh Lord. But we got a long way to go.
Oh, Lord.
New style of category. I want to replicate this one across other ones. This was new. This is called Opposite Day because we got opposites here. We got a fat Stallone and a bad guy Denzel. Who was better opposite? Because Denzel was notably a great good guy.
I feel like this is
Stallone.
Top Bill cast all over again.
Well, no, this is specifically focused on not just cast-wise, but how they differed from their archetype. When you think of Stallone, what do you think of instantly? Just first image.
Action hero.
Shirtless, Rambo, Jack, oily, amazing. Denzel.
Amazing.
Now, we think of Training Day now because it was so prolific, but up until that point, he was always notably a good guy or detective or who differed from their archetype more successfully.
I feel like that
interesting.
edge in follow me here. I feel like that edge with Denzel is there even in his good roles. Like to me, that was a natural transition for him to be a bad guy because he just has like a very intimidating edge to him, even in the positive roles. Like even as John Q, he's the good guy, but he like comes out of the woodwork, fucking guns blazing. Like so, even in his good roles, the dude was laying the fucking smackdown. Whereas with Stallone, I mean, you see some hints of like the quote unquote tenderness in Rocky. That's a really tough one, honestly, because I feel like they both played to their opposites really well. I might go Copland on this one because Stallone really played up the quiet, dumb, small town cop guy really well. And in that role, you didn't really think of him as an action hero. Whereas in Denzel's role, I could see the other side of him in that because he's a very intimidating personality. So
I have a problem with the category because I don't really feel like they are actually breaking their mold too much, either of them, because like to Phil's point, Denzel always brings a lot of aggression and a measure of anger and just this alpha presence to every role, and similarly with Sly, like I feel like he's always kind of a gentle giant a little bit, even in his action like aggressive roles. He's still like who he is emotionally is still pretty tender and pretty soft, even though physically he's a big presence. To me, any acting award, it has to go to Denzel. Like whether this was further away, it was still better no matter what. It was if it indeed was a departure, it was a better departure than Sly's, even though Sly's was fine and good.
You know, I thought Stallone did a really good job, but did he turn in a performance that rattled the cage? No, it was good. It was subtle. Like you said, the differences were subtle. I felt like Denzel seized the moment and completely owned it. I feel like he turned in the whole reason I wanted to do Training Day and find a matchup for it is just because that performance was seared into my brain. And I've seen so many of his films, and I love Manchurian Candidate and Inside Man. Those are great movies. I liked Flight. I like so many of his movies, but this is the one. The minute I think of Denzel, I think of with the stocking on his head and making Jake smoke PCP. Like it's so seared in my brain. It's like it was like a life-changing performance. Whereas I think Stallone makes a nice change here, but it's not something I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's pretty subtle. So Denzel for sure. Tied at 2 here. So going along the line lines of differentiation from the archetype, we had a couple of interesting castings here so we already know about Dre, Snoop, and Macy Gray. We had musicians. We also had one of who I consider as a failed comedian, one of the best female comedians of all time cast in Copland, Janine Garofalo.
Yeah.
Her partner. I loved her. I'll go ahead and start. I already told you guys how I felt. I feel like Dre and Macy Gray could have been cast by legit actors, and
Macy
it still
Dre.
Macy Dre. It would have. Again, I love Macy Gray as a musician, but total waste. I thought anytime they were on screen, it was distracting. I thought we needed real actors. I thought Janine Garofalo, I really didn't know she could act.
Yeah, she was great.
She did so good, and she's one of my all-time favorite comedians. So it was real fun to see her in this. I thought she knocked it out of the park, especially when you just compare it to it's comedian versus rapper versus singer Macy Gray. I go for Janine Garofalo. What do you think, Drew?
To me, yeah, I go Janine as well, just because I feel like I wasn't distracted by the fact that she was Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, it's
that whole
true.
scene, I didn't give anything. I wasn't even thinking about the plot line at all. I was just like, that's fucking Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
in a wheelchair. That's hysterical. And then I forgot I was watching a movie because I'm like, it's Snoop Dogg in a wheelchair.
Now,
So,
granted, Snoop was I don't even put him in the same ballpark as Dre and Macy. I thought Snoop was awesome.
yeah,
I
he
loved
was good. I thought Macy was kind of like bad.
like really bad.
Like not, yeah, just like it was a poor, awkward performance.
Yeah, like she in real life, she's a very artistic, kind of nimble person, and then her trying to be that character was very
Yeah,
weird.
it felt a little stiff.
That's the problem, and that's why this is an interesting category. It's hard when you cast people that aren't actors traditionally. It's hard to unsee who they are, especially us because we love music in this room.
Yeah.
We're musicians. I couldn't unsee.
I don't love
try
music.
to say goodbye, and I don't. And then she's like, "Crooked ass cop."
I mean, in the musician's defense, I have two thoughts. Janine, a comic it's a shorter leap to make to be a stand-up comedian to a serious actor. Because actually, I think being a comedic actor is much, much harder than being a serious actor. For a musician, it's a lot bigger leap. But in Training Day's defense, they were trying to do the like really LA thing and appeal to those like that audience, and so it made sense that they cast those people.
It's a good point.
So, but I'll go Janine.
Janine.
Snoop's my boy. Always Snoop.
Snoop's awesome. Hey, I wish if Dre and Macy weren't in there with those casts, then I'd definitely go Snoop. But
Oh, well, to me, they didn't take Snoop's performance down.
I don't know.
Snoop's performance lives on its own, as always, as do all of his performances.
Yeah, but you have to you got to do the math, and it spits out an equation.
Well, Snoop
It's
is
the
1,000.
of them averaged out against Janine is how I interpreted that question. Not
And we get a lot of Dre. Dre is in it because he's one of the police officers. He's part of Alonzo's crew. So we get frequent Dre. We only got a little bit of Snoop and a little bit of Macy. But the Dre and the Macy is just like it just scrambled my brain. But you going Training Day. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're wrong. It is 3-2. Copland with a little bit of a lead, but there's a lot of time left. Best good boy characters. We got good boy Freddy, good boy Jake fighting against the evil man, the corrupt police officer.
Dude.
Who plays the best? Who's the best good boy? Phil, you kick us off.
I mean, Jake, easy.
Strong
That
safety.
guy was unwavering, except for his momentary needing to, prove himself by smoking. But like,
PCP.
yeah, I mean,
That's a leap, by the way. Can we talk about that?
he stood up to Alonzo and pointed a gun at him and, eventually took him down. So that's a hell of a, moral stand on your first day on the job with your new unit. So
Yeah, I think it would have been really easy for him to be a pushover, both in his character and also as an actor. And I think that both the character and Ethan's performance as an actor held up really well against the opposing force on screen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
dude, that scene where you knew shit was going to be real in that movie when Denzel's like, you need to smoke this. Like, you need to know,
I know
what it's like.
It's the awkward, that tension, the conflict.
Yeah,
You're
and
oh God.
Ethan Hawke was like, no, man, no, I'm not going to smoke it. No, I'm not going to smoke it. Denzel like, you're going to fucking smoke this. And Ethan's like, no, I'm not going to smoke this. Dude pulls out a fucking gun and puts it at his head. And it's like, oh shit. That's what we're in for here. And we're only 20 minutes into the film. Like,
Dude, yeah. And honestly, like the moment, to me, the movie climaxed when he was in the bathtub with the Hispanic gang or whatever.
oh,
And he called, they found that random purse that
What
he
a
pulled from the
scene.
girl that was being assaulted. And he called her, and the whole time, oh God, she's gonna lie. She's gonna lie.
Yep.
And he's
Oh,
gonna
the tension.
splatter this dude's guts all
Yep.
yeah. I was just like, finally, when she told the truth and he was like, telling the truth, I was like, if I could breathe again. Like, it was just like,
that was good. I mean, like, it was kind of, how convenient, but also it was just really engaging, cool storytelling.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. The plot device was flimsy as hell.
Yeah.
Oh, he just happened to grab her wallet and okay,
and kept
that's
the pink purse.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm with you. It was a flimsy, from a plot standpoint. But that doesn't to take away from the drama.
Oh, it was so good. It was so well done. I love that guy's name was Smiley. Also.
Yeah, I want my name to be Smiley, or Frowny.
Where were you today? I was at school.
And we have a category for this, but we had Tuco, Raymond Cruz, who is Tuco in this movie.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
He was so Tuco. This is why he became Tuco, because he was in this movie.
Oh, my God.
Tight. Yeah. Dude, that guy is
his character.
He is
his
so
character
intense.
was so cringy.
Yeah.
What do you think, Kyle?
I go Jake because I can see why they cast Ethan Hawke. This category actually made me think like, I think this is why they cast Ethan Hawke. It's along your lines. He could have been a pushover. And one thing that Ethan Hawke, and I think this is why they hired him, because when he got pissed off at Denzel for going off script, I think they wanted him for that reason, because he's going off script as a cop because his partner, the guy training him, is corrupt, and he doesn't just take it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and he does it early when he's talking about his wife. It's just in the first 6 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, he tells him twice, leave my wife out of this. And he gets pissy with him. He gets hard-headed with him about it. And I'm like, he's sowing the seeds really early in this movie. He's not straight up defying Alonzo, but he's saying, listen, like, I have fucking principles. You know what I mean? And I thought Ethan Hawke delivered that. So I thought Jake, I loved how they slowly built. And then you get that backstory with Scott Glenn, by the way, Jack Crawford, Silence of the Lambs. I don't know if you guys caught that because his goatee. With the guy that played Roger. He's Jack Crawford in Silence of the Lambs. He doesn't look anything like it. That scene where he's like strong safety from Hollywood High, I'm like, I kind of like that little backwoods plot device, strong safety. That just added to his characters. I love the good boy Jake. So Training Day. We're tied back up to 3. Oh, here we go. Best ending shootout scene. Now they're different. Denzel doesn't really fight back, but it's a huge shootout. And then we got this crazy Copland, the only real action. You get like maybe 3 real action scenes in Copland. The ending shootout was a gem to me. What do you think, Phil? Best ending shootout or shooting?
I feel like I want to go Training Day because of the speech at the end and how that whole thing ended, like where he's like sees the entire neighborhood turning on him and he's like screaming at him and like, you're not shit without me or whatever. I think honestly, like Ethan Hawke's performance in that shootout scene where he, has the wherewithal to keep that kid safe no matter what and still does what he needs to do. That was a insanely intense and it felt very real, that whole scene at the end of Training Day. So I'll go with that one.
Yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, I was kind of expecting the whole neighborhood to be like, oh, fuck this cop. Like, this is our dude. Like, he keeps us whatever. And maybe that's, I don't even know why. Like, where was I supposed to? Because, like, then when he turned, like, they all kind of were like, no, let's see how this plays out. Like, we've never seen this guy challenged before. Like, and they didn't protect him. I just wasn't expecting that. That was there's a lot more drama and emotion in that moment to me than anything in Copland.
Well, there were also...
You shot me in the ass!
There were also seeds of moment, like these really quick scenes where they showed the resentment of the neighborhoods that he would go into toward him.
Yeah.
Like, there was that scene where I think one of the guys was like, they were like, dude, this fucking guy, like, why the fuck is he here? Kind of thing, And so you get this vibe that like, Alonzo has some respect in the neighborhood, but it's probably only because of the badge, but everyone else sees him as like a traitor or a scumbag,
Right.
So they were just kind of more than willing to sit back and let it play out.
I go Training Day as well. I thought 2 things. I thought they really, I know this is Denzel acting his ass off, but also the writing here is really interesting because they really found opportunities to, did you guys feel this way? I feel like we saw the full Alonzo and he went down and when the Russians shoot him, like they unload all that lead into his car.
Oh, is that the shootout we're talking about?
But I consider that whole last scene because think about it, because they delay him. He has to be there at midnight, not a minute past. And Ethan Hawke, because of that, delays him.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that as the shoot because that to me wasn't a shootout. They just fucking popped out of their cars and unloaded on the guy. Like to me, the shootout was between Alonzo and Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it too. I think you can lump them together or whatever. I would just say those ending sequences, right? I think Alonzo's character was so fleshed out. Like even when no one's on his side anymore and people are walking away from him, he's been abandoned. He's going to be late to the Russia meeting, so he's good as dead. He is still screaming. I will have all y'all. I will
Delusion.
And like I was just like, not only is Denzel killing it, but the writing did so well. So it's using a great plot device. I really liked how the ending shootout was filmed in Copland, but then this is where Ray Liotta kind of didn't act as well, in my opinion, as he did in Goodfellas and as Shoeless Joe Jackson. All of a sudden, that shot, all of a sudden he's here and he's got a gun and he's backing up. Like I don't feel like we had enough, like whereas Alonzo was fully fleshed out, I don't feel like we got enough development on that character to think that he would feel the conviction to come back and back him up.
I think that was the fault with Copland as a whole, is there was no development of any character.
Yeah.
Like it was, the story was the character, that there was a town that cops lived in, and like all these people were just kind of like set pieces in that story, but you never got that character development in Copland, which is why when kind of it was all said and done, like there was really no emotional attachment. Whereas in Training Day, like you got to know Jake and Alonzo pretty damn well in that 2 hour / 1 day period.
Yeah, they just hadn't earned it, whereas Alonzo, like every moment was earned, like as a fan. And with all of a sudden when Ray Liotta's character shows up, it's like, oh, he's just gonna back him up now. I did like that he was fully deaf now. Like I thought that was an interesting little twist. Oh my gosh, I don't think we're surprised. Although Drew, you were sweating. It was a little closer than you liked.
I was a little nervous.
4-3.
Coplandia.
Training Day, and what a joy to not only talk about one of my favorites, Training Day, but also talk about a Ray Liotta movie the week after his passing. God rest your soul, Ray Liotta. But King Kong ain't got nothing on this episode, so I'm gonna just leave it there. I love you guys. I'm Kyle.
I'm Drew.
And I'm Phil.
That's right. Do you have a Movie Wars license? A Movie Wars license?
The liquor license to war.
The liquor license.